We got a lot on the schedule. So let's go ahead and I will call this meeting to order. This is the January 24th, 2024 Board of Finance meeting for the town of Andover. Let's recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
for all.
Okay, thank you. So we have a pretty busy agenda today. There's a lot in the packet. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look through it,
Yes,
but we will try to get through as much as possible. Like I said, I have a kind of a hard stop around 8:30. I'll need to go. So assuming we're still going, I'll hand it over to Joanne and let her continue the meeting. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Number 2 on the agenda is public speak. Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak? Looks like we have Shannon with us.
Good evening, guys. I'm not a board member, but I'm just here to deal with the Board of Ed, Board of Finance policies. So no public speak. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 3, which is changes or additions to the agenda. Are there any changes, additions to the agenda proposed?
I don't think so. I just had one, thank you for bringing up that are you away, Mark? Is that?
No, I'm in our
No,
bonus
and you
room.
don't.
The lighting's
that's-
not great here. I don't know
No,
why my
I-
video is kind of dim. So
Okay. I appreciate, we'll just stay on task and maybe we'll just, we didn't have a meeting last month and I don't have any additions. Like you said, it's full, but we'll try to just, stay on task and get going on it. And we can hopefully accomplish that.
okay. Well, hearing no changes or additions, we'll move on to item 4, which is old business. The first is to review the policy for AES capital expenditures. Just as a reminder, in the November meeting, I think it was November meeting, we discussed this at length. Had some concerns about some of the limitations that were in the language. I know, Rob, you were going to try to maybe get together with Shannon. You guys are going to maybe try to see if you could kind of work something out. There's no particular pressing need to do this right away, but we do want to try to get it resolved. So I don't know, did you guys get any place in terms of?
Right. I mean, I mentioned to you briefly, the outcome of our last meeting was, kind of a bit of a showstopper. I think Shannon and I have not sat down at length to try and come up with a compromise, because I think the distance between where we were in terms of what she and I had drafted and what the Board of Ed passed, and then what we talked about at our last meeting is enough of a gulf that I'm not sure it's resolvable. And I admit, the new year hit and I got behind on a whole slew of things. But the long story short is that I'm not sure how to square this circle. And I asked Shannon to come tonight to provide her perspective and the Board of Ed, her perspective at the very least, but as a member of the Board of Ed as well, so that we could talk through this some more. I don't think we're going to get to a resolution tonight or in the immediate future. I think we're going to have to keep talking about this. When we went through last meeting, I remember taking notes, and there were like 4 core issues that were raised. One of which I think was fairly straightforwardly dealt with, could be easily fixed, which was some of the boilerplate language that was in our draft needed to be changed, and that's fine. But there were several other things that I think we have a real problem with getting to yes on. So I would say at this point, it might be useful to have Shannon give her thoughts and then, kind of go from there.
Okay. I guess that being said, yeah, definitely we'll turn it over to Shannon.
Okay, thanks. unfortunately somewhat agree with Robert, having watched your November meeting and read through the minutes. I guess I assumed that with the Board of Ed having passed it and with the language that exists in the charter and what's providable by Connecticut law, what we passed was what we thought was doable with regard to all of the confines from other statutes and regulations. And the real intent, as far as my representation, as far as what I believe the Board of Ed was trying to do, was to provide for us to have a capital account, much in the nature of the 2% non-lapsing account, which basically says, hey, we know we're going to have capital expenditures that come up. And instead of having to provide for them in our budget, which is already difficult to pass, it would be great when we have emergencies come up for capital expenditures if we had an account that exists much in the nature of our non-lapsing account, which basically says we have to ask your permission to use whatever's already been allocated to the Board of Education in our budget and is left over at the end of our year to put any money into said account. So that's what we provided for. Then with regard to what we were calling capital, and I get what Robert was referring to with regard to the boilerplate language, I looked at a bunch of different definitions of capital account, what should be deemed as capital, and put that into the language of the policy that then was passed by the Board of Education. So I guess what would be helpful for me is just to hear from the Board of Finance, whomever wants to represent from that perspective, what the issues were that you were particularly concerned about. Obviously, it didn't concern me or the Board of Education in that we passed it. So it'd be helpful to know what were really the sticking points. Again, our having gone through the charter and the law to try to get up to something that matched the language that the 2% non-lapsing account is through, and also then to provide for CIP consideration, which under the charter were not under the CIB's purview. So that's where I'll leave it for now, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah. I guess I'll leave it to the Board of Finance. I mean, and it's been obviously 3 months now, or close to it, 2 months, a little more than that. I think that there wasn't a whole lot of concern. I'll state what I remember and kind of where I think our main concerns were. I don't know that there was concern about the definition of capital expenditures, things like that. That's fluid. There may be some certain things that you could argue the different amounts to go in there. The $25,000, which I think was defined in there, is high, frankly, because you could have a $12,000 purchase of a vehicle or a piece of equipment that is certainly capital because it's going to have a long-term life. So I think from my concern, I think that was, from my perspective, that's one of the things I had a little concerned. But I think that the other, the main concern was that one of the points in there was that the Board of Finance may only transfer funds or authorize the expenditure of funds from the AES capital funds with the approval of the Board of Education. For me personally, this makes no sense, because once it's the Board of Finance's purview to make changes to the accounts. These are the town's accounts. Capital fund, I think, is a great idea. I think most of us, at least my personal view, I think most of us agree with that. But it basically, that last item there takes away the fiscal authority of the Board of Finance. And I think that was, at least for me, that was really kind of the stopper there. I couldn't agree to that one because I don't think it's appropriate in such an agreement. Does anybody else on the board want to comment?
I will, Mark. Yeah, I appreciate Shannon coming to our meeting tonight, joining us and giving kind of a rundown. It has been a couple months. Like you said, we kind of went into it in depth at that meeting. And I do appreciate that she is putting in the legal side of things and following the charter, because I am not as familiar, so getting her opinions on that and following what we're supposed to do. you know, just the overall thing with this, you know, I keep going back to, it's a good idea to start something, you know, and it was, I think it was all brought up in the essence of just having a capital fund, you know, capital improvement fund, whatever we're calling it. I don't have anything in front of me right now, for AES, you know, clearly we wanted to follow just the procedures for projects and things like that of that nature. So we needed that protection. And I know it's going to take a huge amount of trust on both sides. We've all talked about the history. So those are my opinions. And I thought that with this, Shannon did say something tonight that did, you know, I totally understand the mistrust and everything. So she is saying, like, if they were funneling money that was already budget approved for their budget, and then they may have to have all kinds of permission from other people. I can understand that, you know, that kind of, it sunk in tonight, listening to her perspective of that. But I think we have said too, that if there is a good project that needs to be done, that there's no way that people are going to want to stand in the way of that. And I know that's a major trust issue, but, you know, say the Board of Ed, you know, instead of doing a spending frenzy is my whole angle. And then they, you know, to use their allotted budget, and then they decide to funnel it in this account that we approved. And I know it's only my personal, but I think we're really trying to get good relationships going from both sides, that I can't see a scenario where if there was a proven need that it would ever be refused. But again, I know there's so many other things that come into it. I don't want to go on and on. We have a busy night, but that's the part that I can't get past, is like, we're trying to do something good. Can't we all just get along? One of those things. Can't we just try this? And, you know, before we put all these stopping blocks on it. I know there's legalese and all that, but that's my opinion.
Anybody else have a comment?
May
Rob?
I?
Yep.
So with respect to the Board of Finance's sort of powers and limiting them, Mark, I think this is where you and I have a bit of a disagreement, and I'll flesh out why I think what I think. One of the things that I tried to do in this policy is pull the Board of Ed into using the CIP process. They are specifically carved out of that in the charter. And one of my asks was, okay, I get that. Will you voluntarily agree to it anyway? So it is also true that the Board of Finance has the power, very clearly delegated to us, that we can move fund money around. Totally agree with that. That is our power. However, in the interest of compromise, the idea here is we could voluntarily say that in this one particular instance, that we won't use that without agreement from Board of Ed. And so to me, it cuts both ways, right? Each board is ceding something. That was my take. That's why I agreed to the draft that Shannon and I produced. Agree or disagree, that was the thought behind it. Okay. Now, to what Joanne was just talking about, the trust issue. I think one of the big issues that we have from our last meeting, and Eric spoke to this quite a bit during that meeting, was the involvement or not of the Board of Selectmen in any given project of this nature. This has already been a problem between the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed, most famously with respect to the parking lot. Regardless of how you think that all went down, it didn't go well, right? My hope was to try to come to an agreement that would allow us to do things in a better way, that would get buy-in from everyone, and allow us to do projects in a more cooperative way, right? However, from, I believe, and I don't want to speak out of turn because I'm a member of the Board of Finance and not the Board of Ed, but my understanding is that from the Board of Ed perspective, if the idea here is we set this policy up and the Board of Selectmen can just nix anything, even so, it's a problem for them. So when we talked last meeting about what would happen in a specific scenario where you have a project that the Board of Ed wants to do, that the Board of Finance might be okay with, but the Board of Selectmen has problems with, if they can just stop it, then I don't know that this policy is going to go through. And you're left with the current set of incentives for the Board of Ed that we've all talked about before, which is they have money left over. They have to either return, they have the 2% non-lapsing, but anything above that, they got to return to the town. And they have an incentive then to spend it. And we're all trying to, all of us, including the Board of Ed, are like, that's a bad incentive. We need to try to do something better. Well, that I think is the biggest problem we have here, is the idea that they could come to us and say, we want to do X. The Board of Finance might be okay with it. CIP might be okay with it. But if the Board of Selectmen isn't, it's not going to happen in spite of the policy we drafted. So that one, I think, is really where we run aground. And it's not, I don't actually know how to solve that issue. So that's my take. It's kind of my overarching thought on where we are. I don't know how to fix it, but I will say that just with respect to, again, with respect to each board's prerogatives, Board of Ed, Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, if we are trying to do a compromise deal to make things better and get to a place, get to yes, if you will, right? Then I think each board has to be willing to consider the possibility that even if the charter specifically says X, as it does for the Board of Education with regard to CIP, they're literally carved out of it. It's very black letter. It's right there in the charter. Okay. If we are saying to them, hey, give us something, go through CIP, which I think is good. I think it will be a good thing. I'd like to have everything run through CIP, right? Then we have to be similarly willing to make a compromise. That's it. I think I've actually said it like twice now, so I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Rob. I mean, I will say something out front that I think I should make clear, at least in my view, of what the situation is. So the money that would be in this capital account is the town's money. It's reserved for the use of the school district for capital projects, but it's not part of the school budget. Okay. So from my view, it's the town money, therefore goes through the town's purchasing policy. It makes sense that we would go through the CIP. Of course, anything the Board of Ed chooses to do, their purchasing policy is going to be separate, blah, blah, blah. And they don't have a capital account. They probably should under the school, or either since they don't, we can easier to create one under the town. But I think that the reality is this is the town's funds. It's under the control of the town, for better or worse. And that's my problem with, ceding control over the town's money. I think it's inappropriate for the Board of Finance to do so.
Mark, I'm going to interrupt you if that's okay. That's
Sure.
where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
And I thoroughly disagree with you that it's the town's money. That's the problem. What you have in both the non-lapsing account and the account that we're proposing, which I think you just said you believe should exist, is we've had money that the town has voted to budget to the Board of Education. We then have money that the Board of Education says we didn't need that money for whatever reason. Budgets are always estimates. And then we go back to the Board of Finance and say, we'd like to put this amount into a non-lapsing account. That account cannot be touched by the town. As far as I understand
That's not
the
this
law.
account, though. That's not this
No,
account, though, Shannon.
I understand
right?
that. I understand that. And so when we're trying to formulate this, it's kind of this, it's the same thing as far as I'm concerned. And that is, you've got money that has been allocated to the Board of Education for its use. And just like Robert
you.
just said, If in fact you want to encourage us to blow through our entire budget, that's the way to do it, by saying the only way you can do this is XYZ. And you've got to go back through the Board of Finance and through the Board of Selectmen and through CIP. I understand we have to jump through hoops. We have to follow the charter and whatnot. The problem is that it is no longer town money, so to speak, once it's been deemed to be under the auspices of the control of the Board of Education. That's the problem. The problem is seeing it as town money versus Board of Education money. And I'm really tired of hearing that it's all town property and it's all town money. That's not the case. We have a town budget and we have a Board of Education budget and we have a RAM budget, which once they've been allocated and voted on by the town, are those entities' budgets, so to speak, for lack of a better term. So it no longer is town money. The only way in which it goes back to being town money is if we don't use it and therefore have to return it, and there's an amount in excess of what we're asking to put in our 2% non-lapsing account that the Board of Finance doesn't agree with. So the whole thing here, and then I'll stop, and because I will reiterate or repeat myself as well, is I believe that setting up a capital account should be along the same auspices as setting up a 2% non-lapsing account, except that this would exist for capital expenditures. And as Robert already said, the compromise is we go through CIP. So that's where the rubber meets the road with this whole thing, which is it town money? If it's in a town account, it no longer is available for the Board of Education capital uses, because it could be used, as Eric has said on a number of occasions, he can go into any town account when there's an emergency and use that for the town's use. And we're not saying that we wouldn't agree to that in the case of an emergency, or I won't say that on behalf of the Board of Education, but I'm just saying it either is an account that's there for the use of the Board of Education for emergency, or so to speak, capital expenditures that we didn't budget for, or it's not. Just like our non-lapsing account is there for our use. We had to use it because we had a totally unexpected outsourced student that we had to end up paying about $100,000 for. Totally unexpected. If somebody moves it into town, we need that money for unexpected things. That's all I'll say. And I think that's where we're not going to have an agreement. And if that's the case, then that'll be the situation. We'll just have to use up our budget, and then we'll put what we can in our 2% non-lapsing account. But I think what we heard at our 3-board meeting, and this was from the education law expert, is with capital expenditures, we all need to be working together. Because if we're creating a capital asset for the town, it's something that we all should agree on. If it's been given over to the Board of Education, and it's much like we respect the expertise, so to speak, of the Board of Finance, we need to be respected along the lines of the Board of Education is going to make a decision that this is something that we believe needs to be put aside for capital expenditure situation in the future and into our capital account. We make that decision in our belief that we're doing what we need to do pursuant to the mission that's given to the Board of Education, much like the Board of Finance has its marching orders, so to speak. Okay, sorry, I won't go on any further.
Okay.
Mark, I just wanted to say one thing. The only thing that I disagree, I mean, the money that was going to be in the capital account will be some of the carryover, like Shannon said, but, and so then that we were also going to possibly add money through the budget process, you know, funding a little bit on its own, like we fund for trees or we fund for here. So it's not already going to, the whole total of the money won't all be money that has been, you know, left over. That's just an incentive and a place to put it. This is also a give, in my opinion, you know, if we're going back and forth, the account we're talking about, we would have, you know, picked an amount to just fund or something each year, depending on what's going on. That's all I wanted to say. So it's kind of a combo of money. So not all money that's been voted on by the town.
Yeah,
That's a
I
very
think,
different account, it sounds like, Joanne. I'm sorry to interrupt you. That's not what the policy is referring to. So
that's what
if you-
we were envisioning, I think. That's,
Okay.
I think that's the difference.
That
Yeah,
may
and
be a very big
I
difference
actually, I'm
then.
gonna say, I actually see this point. If we were to have a situation where BOE said we have $50,000 left over this year that we want to put in the account, and then the town, through our budgeting
Mhm.
process, we say, we're gonna put 50,000 more in. So now we have 100,000,
Right.
right?
That's
Now
what
it's
I'm
not
saying.
just BOE money. So like, I get that, and I'm not quite sure how to deal with it because these are
Well,
both their concern. Like,
Yeah.
if we do put separate money in there, there's not leftover BOE funding. All right,
Yeah.
now it makes some more sense to me that we would ask for more control of it. That's fair. I
Right,
don't
that's the
know
point
if it makes
missing.
sense. Maybe we should, maybe the
Two
answer
accounts.
is we don't do that. I don't know. But that one actually stymied me. When we talked about that the last meeting, I was like, ugh, I'm not quite sure how to handle that. So fair enough
And
on
Rob, can I
for my
interrupt?
part.
Yeah, only because
Oh.
I've even heard at the last Board of Select or at the budget meeting, it was brought, I mean, for as much as we're saying negative to the Board of Selectmen or whatever, or the fear is there, not negative, sorry, wrong choice of words. I understand the big fear. Again, I'm more positive about this. I heard them advocating for, they were just discussed their first budget meeting. They were discussing all kinds of things. And this account came up that it's a possibility that more funding could go in there. They talked about different things. Eric was very good about addressing some of the needs that he saw were going to happen at the school. So, I just want to bring aside that I want to bring about that. And I think we're probably not going to make a decision tonight. So we're going to all air our things and then probably go back and think about it. But I'm glad we're able to get this, out there, that a lot of people were positive about the account on the Board of Selectmen, Eric, all the needs that were coming about in the town and even putting a chunk of money in it. So I think we have to, just consider that. I understand the fear side of the Board of Ed, maybe they'd have 20,000 left over. And then we said baby steps. So now with all this problem, I'm really going to want to baby step it. And then
Mhm.
just see and kind of prove to everybody that it's a good account and that the intentions are all good with it. That's it. Thank you.
I
Is there-
really appreciate your explaining it the way you did, Mark and Joanne, because it sounds like we're talking about two different accounts, or at least two different accounts in the way that I had understood them.
Right.
I thought that what Robert and I were addressing was a joint BOE, BOF policy to address money that we would have directed on our behalf that had already been allocated to the BOE into what's like the non-lapsing account that would then be a capital account. What you're talking about is a totally different animal, which we deal with on CIP all the time, that now the town has taken into, for example, putting money aside as we did for the construction of the community center, putting money aside for the future investment in fire trucks, where we can't come up with $1 million immediately to fund a fire truck.
Mhm.
Those are town accounts that are budgeted to those savings, so to speak, over time, that are included in the town budget. If you're talking about creating kind of a separate thing that we do with the RAM budget, when we pass the RAM budget, we pass both a regular account and a capital account for the RAM budget. That's a different animal. And then we've got the different animal of, if we're talking about creating, so to speak, a savings account for capital expenditures for the school or the Board of Education over time, that's in a completely different animal. So I think we need to be clear what we're doing, and we've already taken a lot of your time, and I know you've got a very full schedule. So maybe I will certainly stick around to hear more comments, or if you want to send comments via Robert, and Robert and I go back to this and see what we can hammer out. But you've got a hard stop at 8:30, Mark. I heard that, and I know you've got a very full calendar, so I don't want to take too much more time, but I also don't want to cut off anybody. I'm sorry.
No, Shannon, I want to just go back to Mark. Mark, that is the way I understood it. And that's probably the way you envisioned it as well, like you just said. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we have two different things. We were thinking of something larger than just something to capture anything in excess of the 2% type thing. We were thinking bigger in a lot of the ways, but we have to talk about a mechanism
Yeah.
to get there. And so there's potentially two different things. We may have to we may
So-
have to rethink this thing and
Yep.
do it. Eric,
And I'll
you
just
wanted to
agree
add
that-
something?
I'll just agree that when I was part of drafting what Shannon and I came up with, I wasn't thinking of that initially. Once we got to our November meeting, we started talking about this stuff. Honestly, I hadn't considered that part of it. Now that we have talked about it, like I completely see it. But at the time when we were drafting it, it wasn't something I was thinking. I was thinking about this is a very narrow thing. And then we talked about it some more and we kind of broadened it. And that has implications.
Yeah, it
So
does, for
I'm
sure,
just
yeah.
saying, so that in my defense, I wasn't thinking along those lines when she and I just sort of sat down at my counter here and hammered this out. We weren't thinking along those lines.
That's
Once we
fine.
get the board of
Understood.
finance, okay,
Yeah.
now, I'm not saying that what we talked about in November is a bad idea. I'm
Right.
just saying that changes the
Yep.
parameters and it makes it
Well,
a little bit more complicated.
Well, I'm gonna propose that we table this. I think we all
Yeah.
know we have differing understandings of
Yep.
this issue.
Yeah.
So Eric, I know you wanted to add something, I'm assuming you'll keep it brief and to the point and germane to this.
Please.
Sure, a few things. One, I proposed to the Board of Selectmen in the initial budget to put $100,000 this year into the AES Capital Improvement Fund. The reality is they have a couple pretty significant capital needs. 100,000 is actually probably too little for this year, but it's going to be a tough budget year. I don't think I would get boards to agree to more than that. I think this does come down to trust. Trust goes both ways. The Board of Ed's not been too good about any sort of financial reporting to anybody. And that's come to roost. And I don't think that's germane to this topic, but that is problematic. The reality is, the Board of Ed cannot do major capital projects without the approval of the Board of Selectmen. And without a charter change, I don't really believe the Board of Education has a mechanism other than the 2% non-lapsing account for their own capital fund. The town does. Because the town has a mechanism for doing it, we should use that mechanism. Second, the town pretty regularly, when it gets to the end of the fiscal year and has excess money left in various town accounts, puts that money in its capital funds that it was not able to fully fund through the budget mechanism. We do that almost every year. What we're proposing for the school is no different than that. You get to the end of the year, you haven't spent all your budget, you put that money, you get the choice. You either put that money, recommend it goes into the 2% non-lapsing account, or you recommend it goes into the capital account. And additionally, the town funds on an annual basis, the AESR.
Yeah.
Energy Saver
Me in my
Lights.
office.
Oh.
Capital funds, and that's how
Right.
I see this working. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of how we saw it. And again,
Yeah.
I think I would ask that we table it. We clearly
Yeah.
had differential understandings. And I think there's a shot that we can, now that we're a little more clear on that, or that's given a little clarity, maybe we can take that back and if Rob and Shannon are willing to give it a go, or maybe go back to even the Board of Ed and kind of explain like what we're envisioning. There may be some alternative mechanisms, but I think that it's important that we have this understanding, and that wasn't there. So, that would explain a lot of the
Right.
discomfort over the way the language of and then the mechanism of the agreement was written. So, again, I don't want to cut off debate or discussion. Does anybody else on the board have anything they want to add?
Is there any way that money that goes into the capital account could kind of be designated in two ways? This may be stupid, I don't know, but like the town puts $100,000 in their the way Eric did. And the school, the Board of Ed says, we got $30,000 left over that we want to put in capital improvement. Is there any way to say that this money is for capital improvements for the school, but if there was an emergency, we could use it? But this money that was put in, that was left over from last year's budget, is specifically protected somehow. I think that would give us, everybody, what they really want.
It's probably something for Eric and the treasurer and other people to kind of talk about separately. I'm not sure, what the mechanism is. I hate to tie our hands too much about it. I'll say what I said back in November. I mean, if we were reckless in reallocating funds that were intended for the school, we should be voted out, because if the town votes to put in $100,000 for school improvement and we take it because we want to, I don't know, put
Build a
new
bridge.
furniture and build a bridge or whatever, then they should take us to task for it. But I don't want to subsume the, kind of the authority in terms of the charters. That was my concern.
And again, it's just
So-
that, again, it's the same old thing. I ran into this with work, is where's the incentive not just to blow your budget and spend every last penny? We do that every year at the end of the year. Oh, we watch your pennies all
Right.
year long. End of the year comes and say, hey, Bill, could you spend $100,000 if we gave it to you right now for your training department? I'm like, what, now in November? No, I can't. But so the incentive there was no incentive. You just spend it all year long. Whereas, it just seems like we're taking the incentive away from the Board of Ed to judiciously spend their money and be able to give some money back to the capital improvement fund. But I'll leave it
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. I mean, this is the issue. And Bill, I thought along the same lines, could we segregate it somehow? I hadn't really fully thought out my feelings on that and my thoughts on that. But, this is the issue with the scope of the account. If we're putting money in from both the BOE and the town budget, it complicates it, right?
Yeah.
And the Board of Ed was absolutely, as Shannon explained, absolutely thinking that wasn't a thing. They were thinking it was solely going to be leftover BOE money. So, all right.
I think this is
Yes,
gonna make
I
them
will absolutely
happier.
talk about it with
Yeah.
Shannon some more, and we
Yeah.
should probably move on
Yeah.
to other agenda items at this point. I think we've kind of
Yeah.
clarified where we are, and at this point, let's get going.
I think they're gonna be pleased, though. I think this was a shock to Shannon. I would think,
Well,
but anyways, let's move on.
It- no,
Yeah.
we'll have
Ready.
to let everybody sink in and kind of reach an understanding about it, I guess.
Thank you very much for your time and for allowing me to be here. And I'm also supposed to be at a Board of Ed budget workshop. So
Okay,
not trying
good
to-
luck.
get out of your Board of Finance meeting. But if there are any more concerns or questions, certainly email me, or Robert can get back in touch with me and we'll work towards getting something to you for next meeting. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. All
Thank
right.
you, Sean.
Okay, well, if everybody's okay with that, let's move on to the next agenda item, which is the review of the budget to actual. It's in the packet. The details are there. Eric, I see our revenue's down quite a bit. Do we have any major concerns?
No, I mean, we always get stuff in late, so I'm not particularly concerned about it.
Yeah, okay. And we're
it's not like
probably
I
not
don't
gonna
think
pick
we're
up-
gonna get it.
Yeah. Well,
I
the
mean,
one thing I
any-
think we said we expected to come in a little light on was some of the building permit fees and things things are just not happening this year as much as they had been and we had budgeted, correct?
Well, actually, I've looked at the stuff from the building department. The building department looks like overall it will come in on budget. There's always a big lag right now. And there will be a big increase in the spring. You also see that with a transfer station.
Hmm.
And it's weird because all the stickers we're gonna sell are for the next fiscal year. But when they sell them before July 1, they fit on this year's budget. So we expect to get that in late in the year.
Yeah,
Clerk fees are the unknown. Clerk fees do look like they're a little light, but they're not a lot light. They're like a few thousand light. So I don't have
Okay.
any significant concerns. And we have gotten, our tax collector is working a little harder than the previous tax collector. So it looks like we're gonna be fairly up on previous tax revenue. In fact, we just got somebody that paid off $40,000 worth of back taxes a week or two ago, which is a nice chunk. So overall, I think we're gonna be okay.
Okay, good. We have one big bright spot, and that's the investment interest is just blowing the budget out of the park. We've got
Yeah.
over 50,000 accrued up to compared to a budget of 3,000. So that's pretty impressive. And that's all, I think, due to the Eric and Cheryl putting that in the STIF fund, right?
Yep, that's exactly it. The money's now
Right.
going into a short-term investment fund account run by the state of Connecticut.
Nice.
You know,
Nice job.
I love that stiff account. I wanted that so bad. I dreamt of something like that. And then turns out years and years went by where we could have used it and we didn't. It
Oh.
just, oh, it's so frustrating.
Yeah,
But I'm so
Nice.
happy we're doing it now.
We'll take it when we have it. Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
yep.
Any other areas of concern, Eric? Or-
Brian, you had something?
Yeah, sorry, this is awkward, but I have to run out real quick. And I'm gonna join. Sorry. Join on my phone. Is that okay? I have to pick up my daughter.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
See you soon.
So, no, I don't have any real big issues. I mean, there's a bunch of little things that have come up, like we really, and I will put that in this year's budget, so we anticipate it. But the state raised the minimum wage as of January 1, because they said they were gonna index it on COLA, and even though it only went up on July 1, 6 months later, they bumped it up 3.5%. So, there's a bunch of little things we didn't account for that we're gonna take somewhat of a hit for. But overall, we're in decent shape on the budget and on revenue overall. The one kind of unexpected thing we did is we did get $10,000 from the Secretary of State's office for the extra hours it's going to take to run early voting. And one of the things that was kind of weird and unfortunate with that is that that money we just got, and they basically said that they're going to give us that money on a calendar year, which makes no sense because it's now going to cross fiscal years. So what a number of towns are doing to compensate with that is just setting up a permanent fund. If the Board of Finance is okay with that, I think that would be my approach to dealing with that, is instead of just putting that money, set up a permanent fund for that, because the Secretary of State's office has said she's envisioning funding that every year and just putting that money in, so we have that reserve to cover the personnel time costs for early voting. So in terms of the recent budget stuff, that's really what I have. I mean, I'll answer any questions you've got.
One other thing I noticed, we have almost zero expenditures for snow removal. Is that just a lag thing, or do we really literally do no snow removal through December?
No, through December, we did basically zero. I mean, very
Okay.
recently, we've blown through. We went from, the public works supervisors freaked out because we've got a contract. Basically, we had a lot of salt left over last year, but we still essentially agreed to buy X amount. And it's like, I don't even know what we're gonna do with it if we really have to buy another 400 tons, because basically you put in how many tons you think you're gonna buy, you're legally obligated to buy at least half. So that's how the system works. He's like, I don't know what we're gonna do with another 500 tons. Since then, we've blown through an awful lot of salt. So we will replenish and we will spend a good chunk of that money. Public Works has been out plowing a lot, so we will, that will catch up certainly in the next month.
Okay.
There's weekends involved too, I think, right, Eric? So overtime and all that stuff. So I'm sure there's gonna be money there.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's gonna end up, a lot of that will end up getting spent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other questions? Any comments or questions for Eric? Okay, hearing none. We go on to the check register as well. I don't know if anybody has any questions on
I
that.
do. I have a question on the, Marina, and I don't know which page, I had printed something out. Marina is still working with you, Eric. I saw one check on page 2 at the end, quite a big amount. Is she just employed doing the minutes? Or has she been doing something else in the accounting office?
No, that's minutes and, she got way behind on submitting her requisitions. She does
I
minutes for Selectmen, Board of Finance, Board of Assessment Appeals, Planning and Zoning, Inland Wetlands, and maybe
Mhm.
somebody else too. So,
Okay,
so
just the
Oh, yeah.
minute, no problem.
paying her a fair bit of money to do minutes. But it's for an awful lot of boards and commissions, and she's
Okay.
fairly good at it. So,
Okay, thank you.
yep.
Other questions for Eric? And that? Okay, hearing none, I guess we will move on to item 5 on our agenda, which is new business. Again, this is the nominations, election of the board chair and vice chair. I think it was, I can't remember, sometime back in the summer we had, or maybe in September, we had agreed to a policy of having the elections on a routine basis, generally in the meeting following the general election, or 2 meetings following the general election, to give the new board members the opportunity to elect the chair and vice chair. So here we are. So that being said, I guess we can take nominations for chair and vice chair. If everyone puts, who's next? Who's lining up to do this? So, Rob, you got your hand
Well,
up. I like
as
it.
I told
like
you,
that.
Mark, earlier today, I am happy to have you be the chair. I, for reasons that are my own, don't feel up to it. So I'm happy to nominate you and stick with it. I think it works and it's working well. So why change it? It ain't broke, don't fix it.
I would second that.
I'd like to ask Mark how he feels about it.
Well, as I told Rob, I would be happy to turn over the reins if somebody were chomping at the bit and willing I'm willing to continue. I guess I would say, it was nice to have that break when Diane took it over for a while. But it takes a little of the pressure off. And I guess I should state for the record too, that I think everyone kind of understands this, but the chair and the vice chair, these positions really in many ways have no more power than any of the other board members. We get one vote like everyone else. What you do have the opportunity or responsibility occasionally to do is you sometimes participate in other discussions. Eric will sometimes call me and say, hey, what do you think about this? Do you think the board will have a problem? Should I put this on the agenda? And you will sometimes have such responsibilities. But unlike the board of first selectmen, we have the first selectman and a board of selectmen. The first selectman's got some additional responsibilities and powers that the rest of the board does not. That doesn't really the case with the chair and the vice chair. Really, the job is to keep the business of the Board of Finance moving along. Even with the agenda, any member could propose something go on the agenda that, we don't necessarily have on there. And I don't always emphasize that. But if you guys ever had something you wanted to add it to the agenda, you just have to contact the chair and request that it get put on. And of course, there's always the mechanism to the changes and additions to the agenda in the meeting itself. So that's really, I think, what the role of the chair and the vice chair is to keep the business of the Board of Finance moving along, observe the rules, maintain order in the meetings. So that's really what it's all about. There's organizational stuff behind that, but it's a little bit more commitment for sure, but it's not huge. It does, necessarily. So that being said,
Responsibility without power.
Mark, you do a good job. I mean, I'm in favor of you as well. I mean, I think you outlined it really well. I would add that people that do, you just have to, follow along with what's going on in the town. It's nice to bring that aspect to the meetings, kind of like be aware of what's going on. That's all I see as far as the difference of being in one of those roles, having the time to commit to kind of being in the know of things. That's my other thing. And you certainly do a good job of running meetings and all of that. And I'm definitely in favor as well. So are we gonna vote at this point? or-
Anybody have any other nominations for chair? I think Linda's waving her hand, so no. Okay, hearing none, I guess we'll go ahead and take a vote. So Rob is nominated that I retain the chair position for the Board of Finance. All in favor, say aye. I'll abstain, actually. I'm not raising my hand. Any opposed? Are you opposed, Louise, or are you just slow on
Oh,
that?
no. You do a great job, Mark.
Okay, just want to
Well,
make
who
sure
is
we're
our
clear
current
on that.
Vice chair, is it Joanne?
Joanne, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Rob. No.
I thought so.
Yeah.
I was just making sure I wasn't making that up.
I'm just teasing.
All right, and we have one abstention, which is me, and so that motion passes. Thank you very much for your trust and I guess trusting me with the responsibility. So that motion passes, and we'll move on to vice chair. Again, basically the same duties. Their job is to step in. Sometimes I'll include Joanne. Something comes up, I'll forward it to her, or we'll, just let her know kind of what's going on. As I would for all of you, if it's something germane to the business of the board, if it's imminent, but sometimes just, we'll bounce things back and forth in terms of the agenda or what's, what the next steps are. I let her know about, what happened with Kelly and all that stuff. So that's kind of what that role entails. And then clearly if the chair is unavailable, then the vice chair has the responsibility of running the meetings, et cetera. And I don't think we even had a vice chair up until few years ago. So I think it's a good position to have somebody steps in, especially somebody who's super willing to spend the time that Joanne has and attending the town meetings, following up, which I haven't always had the time to do. So it's good to know.
So I nominate Joanne, as long as she still would like to, as vice
Thank
chair.
you, Louise. I'd be interested in it.
I would second
Well, then
that.
I'll second that. Oh,
I got Bill first,
Bill got it.
also known as not Kathleen. So,
Yes, not
Okay.
Kathleen nominates or seconds it.
okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Did you vote, Joanne?
Am I supposed to? Sorry, I didn't pick up that.
You can
part.
vote for yourself.
I vote for myself. Yes.
Okay,
I don't know.
I wasn't sure. I didn't see.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah.
Okay, this motion passes. Thank you. Okay, and appreciate your willingness to serve.
Happy to.
Okay, so that being said, move on to item 5B, which is under new business, which is the vacant position on the Board of Finance. I had, as I reviewed with you, I sent all of you the email, Kelly Wood had decided she had some changes and just her personal commitments. She decided she really couldn't do the couldn't do justice to serving on the Board of Finance, and felt it would be better if we found somebody else who had more time available for it. So I appreciate her input there. You're probably aware, if you haven't seen, I did mention in my email, but we've had announcements go off in the River East Bulletin. It's also on the town's website, and I think it might have been on the Facebook page too. I heard on that.
Correct.
Can't remember if okay, did it go out there? Okay, yeah. So I don't think there's really much to say about it at this point. To my knowledge, we have not received any applications. Joanne, did you hear back from Carol by any chance?
I did, and she said that she hadn't received anything yet.
Okay,
A couple
okay, so
days
she
ago,
must,
so.
she must not have replied all, so I thought maybe she's
Oh,
replied directly
okay.
to you, so I hadn't seen anything from her, so.
Hey,
Okay,
Mark, if somebody's interested, who do they get in touch with? How do they submit their name?
they should submit a letter of interest to the, they can send it into the town hall, to the town clerk, or to my attention, really. Just send it to the town hall. I think it says in the Riverese to send it into the attention of the chair of the Board of Finance.
Okay.
And she'll collect them there. She's done that in the past, and then, we'll, I think we asked her to do it until February 9th.
Mhm.
So.
I mean, if anybody here knows anyone that would be a good candidate, by all means, pressure them.
Yeah, well, one
yeah.
obvious pool would be the people who ran in November that weren't elected. There
Right.
were a couple,
Right.
so I'm not sure. I don't remember who they were. But that would certainly be, if anybody knows those candidates, it would definitely be the obvious people to talk to.
Mhm.
I'll double check on that a little bit. Because I know we did, like you said, we had some candidates. And I know we have had people in the past when we've had vacancies throw their hat in the ring and then it didn't work out.
Mhm.
Like when we put Bill on the board, we had another
Yeah.
candidate, but then and I know she's a very busy college professor, so
Yeah.
her schedule probably doesn't allow for it. I talked to her, I remember at the this past summer or fall rather, at the school, and I don't think it's probably viable, but we should just
Yeah.
anybody who knows anybody, it's always hard to fill these positions, so anybody you can think of. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, please do let them know, and we'll try to get some good candidates in there. So if nobody has anything else on that, let's move on to item 5C, which is the schedule for budget workshops and the budget hearings. So just as a reminder, I think by charter, we have to have the budget hearing no later than 60 days before the end of the fiscal year. So that means that would have to happen sometime in April. We usually target about the middle of April. Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes you've put out like a proposed budget schedule, and I don't think we have
Yeah.
seen one.
Okay, let
Have
me
we?
pull that up. I thought I had sent that to you.
It's not in the
Uh,
packet, I don't think.
Yeah, it's not in the packet. Let me
Oh,
share
okay.
my screen and I'll grab it so you can
Okay.
all look.
So while Eric's pulling that up, the other thing I'll mention that what we did last year and I thought worked pretty well is that we had budget workshops basically scheduled every week from mid-March until mid-April. And then the last budget workshop was basically the budget hearing. We didn't actually hold all those meetings, I don't think. Not everybody attended every one because it was a lot. But that was one to review.
Okay,
It
sorry.
says Board of Finance there. Maybe I didn't go far back enough in my email, but
Is this the one I think you're hopefully looking at the screen which shows the schedule?
that's the 22-23 budget. We're on 23-24.
Oops.
Well, maybe you just had a date wrong there. Looks like you just didn't
I
change the
see
date.
2024 on here.
Yeah. Okay.
Oops.
I think that's
Yeah, there
because everything else looks like it's, yeah. So you got a few, yeah.
I
Okay.
think I just gave you I gave you an earlier draft, but the dates are basically right.
Mhm.
You will get the budget from the Board of Selectmen. They have 6 budget workshops scheduled between last Monday and March 1st with the intention that you have the budget in your hands on March 1.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think we got it unless I missed it, but okay. But yeah, so this basically conforms to the normal schedule that we follow every year.
Mhm.
And then April 22 to 26, Finance Board Public Budget Hearing. Last possible day, yeah. So we don't want to do that. We want to do. So you're proposing April 22 to 26 that week. Yep, that makes sense. We typically do that well, I guess we do that on a Wednesday, right? I mean, that's the reason we have to do it any other day. we would just do that. If that's our normal Board of Finance meeting schedule would be
Mhm.
April 24.
There you go.
May 1, 2, or 7.
I'm trying to open up my calendar just to see.
So Eric, for the town budget meeting, May 1st, 2nd, or 7, what's with the 1st, 2nd, or 7? Is it, he's trying to avoid Friday and Monday?
Yeah, because of the oddity that says it's the second following Tuesday.
Right,
And I don't think you want to do it on a Friday anyway.
Mm-mm,
No.
Because you're just not gonna get good attendance on a Friday.
right.
Agree.
okay.
So you want to schedule April 24th for the public hearing?
Yeah, I would say April 24th of the public hearing would be my
Mhm.
proposal. And that's the normal Board of Finance meeting.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
then I don't know. So May 1st is a Wednesday, May 2nd is the Thursday, and May 7th is the Tuesday. What does the board feel about scheduling that? I'm frankly okay with any of those dates.
I'm sorry. could
Sorry,
you say
Mark,
that-
what were the other 2 dates besides the Tuesday, the 7th?
Yeah,
So Eric's proposed dates for the town budget meeting would be May 1st,
which
May
is a,
2nd, or May 7th.
what days are
First-
those? May,
First,
May
first is Wednesday,
Wednesday,
Oh.
yeah.
the 2nd is Thursday, and the 7th is Tuesday, the following Tuesday.
So for me, I would say that the 1st or the 2nd are totally fine. The 7th is less good for me. I'm not saying I couldn't do it, but that's a
Hmm.
week, that's a day I have the kids. Actually, no, actually flat out, I can't do it on the 7th because of
7th, yeah.
kids' soccer practice. I can't.
Yep.
May 1st works well for me, but it's just,
Yeah, I think it would, I like the Wednesday just because we have our normal Wednesday meeting, so
And a
we know
cycle,
that the Board of
yeah.
Finance is typically available.
May
What do you
1st
guys think?
works for me too.
That would work for me, May 1st.
yep.
I'm
Alright,
good
let's
with
do
it,
it.
Mark. My question is, will documents be ready? Is that enough time? I mean, we always have enough time preparing. Yeah, right? There's not an issue with that, being prepared with that first date.
Yeah,
after-
it's about a week, so I think,
Yeah.
we should have a pretty close to final
Okay.
budget for our town meeting
Yeah,
or for the budget hearing.
Mhm.
And then we have the town meeting the following week.
because at the public hearing is when they can make suggestions. We hear all the information. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
I
hopefully
hear what you're
people
saying. By
are,
then we have we've done our, okay, I'm just processing our.
Yeah,
process.
I
Yep.
think that's the end. That's, we've
Yeah,
gone through
okay,
our workshops.
And I'm good with the
and-
first two. Yeah, whatever. I'm good with any of the dates really, but
So
long-
my suggestion would be that if you do it if you do public hearing on the 24th and budget meeting on the 1st, that works. I would just as a standby scheduling a meeting on the 25th if you absolutely needed it. Like normally after the budget public hearing, you don't really get a whole lot of response and then you just send the budget on. But if there's something you want to really discuss and act on, you'd have to do it fast.
that's what
Because
I'm
we still
talking
have to
about.
publish, it has to go in the paper and a bunch of stuff has to happen. And 7 days is okay, but it's tight. So you would have to do it on Thursday if we were gonna do
Okay.
that.
yep, okay.
That
So
was
that
my
sounds,
thought. Yeah. Oof.
yeah, so that makes sense. So what I would propose that we set for meetings then, based on what I'm hearing, is we expect to have the budget from the Board of Selectmen on March 1st, Eric, correct?
Correct.
So what I would propose is we give ourselves a week or so to digest that.
Yes,
And they've often been late. Hopefully they won't be, but they've often
Okay.
been late. But let's propose that we have budget workshop meetings on the 13th and the 20th.
Yeah,
April 3rd, April 10, and April 17th.
I like that.
So March
The-
13th.
March 3rd.
20th,
Yep,
okay. And
the
what were other
27th
dates?
is the normal budget Board of Finance meeting.
Yep,
April 3rd, budget workshop. April
Okay.
10th, budget workshop. April 17, budget workshop.
Mhm.
And then budget hearing at the Board of Finance regular meeting on
Fourth.
April 24.
I apologize. I'm trying to plug this all into my phone and I've lost the plot a little bit. The 13th.
send it
the
around.
20th.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know.
We'll send an
but-
email or. we'll
Okay,
get-
fair enough. fair enough, sorry.
13th, 20th, the 3rd, 10th, 17th,
Third, 10th, 17th. Okay, got it.
and then the
And then the meeting and then the budget.
the hearing
workshop.
will be
The
at our
hearing.
meeting on the 24th.
24th.
And then final workshop, Eric proposes on Thursday, the 25th, with with luck, if we're good, we won't need, we can cancel it.
Yeah,
May 1st will be the town budget meeting.
Got it. I'm all set.
sounds good.
Okay. And then, of course, everything's going to sail through. We'll have the referendum. It'll pass on the first round.
Did last year, right?
Yeah.
You can't count.
It's,
right?
I am unfortunately I'm traveling a bit for work and by mid-June, so that's going to be a
Do good
challenge. June,
job. Yeah,
yeah. So if all goes well, it'll be fine. I'll be ready for that break. So
so if everything went smoothly, that would give us a referendum on May 14th.
yeah,
okay,
Okay,
so it's the second Tuesday following the meeting, right?
correct.
Okay. Good.
oops.
Any further comments or input there?
Good with that.
Okay. We'll move on to the next item, which is the discussion on the state and local bridge program. Eric,
I'm gonna bow out at this point. Everybody.
okay.
Bye,
Thanks, Louise. Enjoy
Louise.
your vacation. Thanks for joining. I appreciate it. I know you didn't intend
Take
to, but
Yeah, take
a lot
care.
going
Louise.
on. So
Okay, bye-bye.
enjoy the rest of your holiday.
You too.
Okay.
Oops.
Okay, I want to run something by you. Actually, before I go back to the Board of Selectmen with it, because I think they will agree to it. But my question is whether you will. So the purchasing policy kind of gives an out, not an out, but
An exception.
an exception for the requirement for an RFP for professional services under a whole series of circumstances. We've actually already done an RFP for professional services, which is what we used to hire Nathan Jacobson as the town's engineer. We went after and hired that firm specifically for their expertise and their success in getting things through the state local bridge program. Full stop. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the reason why we selected them. And then we signed a contract with them that said, you know, based on what had been kind of the standard rates and charges for getting bridges and bridge applications through all the regulatory hurdles once they were accepted into the state local bridge program. One of the problems we faced is over the last 6 years, the average cost of doing a culvert / small bridge program that fits under the state local bridge program has gone up by a factor of 4. And some of that is materials and labor. But one of the biggest single factors of that is the regulatory environment has changed and the requirements for the Army Corps of Engineers have changed. and the requirements for deep has changed. So the cost of doing these bridge projects has gone through the roof. We initially put a cap on our agreement with Nathan Jacobson, saying a hard cap, saying if it's going to be over, 75,000, we will go out to a separate RFP. And we put that there because we couldn't envision it would actually cost us more than that for the engineering. But the reality is the engineering for every one of these projects is going to be more than that now. 3 years ago, it would not have been, but it is. So what I want to do is not go to RFP because we've already gone to RFP and hired them as the firm to do these jobs. And we've also successfully gotten federal funding or state funding. So they've submitted an application on our behalf that has been accepted, and only about 30% of them made the cut. So it was a good application. It was done well, and we got the state funding. And I want to just proceed with Nathan Jacobson and just not go to an additional RFP. But I wanted to sound you out first as a board before I go back to the Board of Selectmen, since both you and the Board of Selectmen agreed to the original contract with Nathan Jacobson. So that's what I'm asking. What are your thoughts on it? Because it is a lot of money, and this is the public trust we're talking about. But on the other hand, we went through an RFP process. We interviewed a whole bunch of engineering firms, and we picked them to do bridge projects for us. So I really want to stay with them instead of then going back out to RFP for the job itself. And I did put their proposed, I put the award letter in, and then I also put in their proposed cost schedule for it, which is pretty expensive. But when you look at it, it's also a whole lot less than when you use the state estimate for what you should be paying. It's definitely less than that. But it is about $128,000 cost that we would be incurring for this, of which half the town would be paying because it will be half funded by the state. Thoughts?
I'm personally okay with it. It kind of makes me feel a little angsty, but I think that it would be in the town's best interest to proceed thusly.
Eric, what is the time frame and cost of going out to RFP? Like, how long does it take to vet out these type of things, review them, and if any cost involved? Any idea?
I would say soup to nuts to write it and to put out an RFP, and to select a committee and to review again and to make a decision and re-interview whatever engineering firms you want to hold in the running. I'd say that's a 3 to 4 month process, start to finish. So it's not quick, but it's not the end of the world. I mean, honestly, one of my biggest concerns with this is that I'm not necessarily sure. I was trying to think about who I would get to even pull in for a panel to help, because this is a very specialized design thing. Like with the federal local bridge program, when we go to hire an inspector, for instance, the state will provide us an engineer to sit on a review panel and give technical advice on who you hire. But there's no equivalent in the local. And ordinarily, I would use our town engineer to review these proposals, but I can't do that since I'm sure they're going to be one of the applicants for it. So I'm actually a little questioning how I'm even going to pull off the RFP. But if I have to, I will. I mean, I have enough engineering buddies. I think I could probably line a few of them up to do the evaluations.
I feel like Mark, I think I'm okay with it. I'm a little apprehensive because it's a big jump in money and people look at us to be stewards of that money, but given everything you said and that they were already approved once for the project, I can see there's a good case to use them since they were already approved, vetted, and approved.
Right. I mean,
My-
the
my
reality
thought-
is. Oh, sorry.
And they've been successful.
Right. And my only thought is that, you know, if at the end of the day, we go through a 4 month process and it's not any cheaper, what have we done? Like, how does that help us? It's frustrating to see costs balloon like that, but there's no get out of jail free card here, right? So, yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to defer to you on this, Eric. If you think this is the right call, I think I'd be okay with it too.
I heard the whole thing. I'm sorry, I had to step away. I was listening and I understand the difference. Just the only thing I couldn't hear from just slightly off, how much more is it, Eric? I just missed that amount.
So we have.
I mean, I see the letter, I reviewed it and I
Yeah.
heard your whole, I just didn't know how much bigger. Yeah,
Yeah, so the cap in the contract
75.
was up to $75,000. I
Mhm.
didn't have to ask anything of anybody. When it went beyond $75,000, we were envisioning it, you know, having to go out to contract.
Mhm.
And this is this total
Like
lump sum-
50K, right?
Yeah, it's about 50K over. It would not exceed 128,000.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
a
big
little over
jump.
50K. Big jump.
Yep. Yep.
So I agree with what all of you have said too, just given the circumstances, you've already gone through it once. You know, that's it. I mean,
So just out of curiosity, Eric, sorry, are we gonna need to pull money from contingency or something here, or are you gonna be able to do this within a budget?
No,
It's
so
better.
we can get them started on the engineering anytime we want because we have a bridge and culvert fund. And we have way more in the bridge and culvert fund than the engineering costs will be. So that's not a problem.
Right, but it'll
We
erode.
are, we
Yeah,
are going to have to add more money this year and next year to the bridge and culvert fund to afford this. Because this is, you know, and I think the costs will go down. You know, because it seems like the companies are starting to figure out the new regulatory hurdles. So it seems like the bridge costs have kind of peaked and they're coming down a little bit, but not a lot. So this project, we have funded up, the original design proposal was about 1.8 million. 1.85 million, of which the state has agreed to fund up to $950,000 towards. So, but I mean, I would hope we can actually do the project for about 1.5, which is around 7, which sounds like a crazy number to me for what we're doing, to be honest.
wasn't that
um,
double what we thought originally? Like 750 a culvert?
Yeah, I mean, it is.
Mhm.
You
But
know,
it is
so
what it
I,
is.
yeah. Yeah, it's absurd for what you're getting, to be honest. Absurd. But I also don't know of any other options.
Right.
So,
So when we come to budget season, you know, instead of looking at the bridge and culvert fund saying we need to put 200,000 or 300,000 in, we're gonna be looking at like, you know, maybe we should put 500,000 in, something like that.
well, not per year, but, so I'd have to look back at my notes. We've got to come up with about $350,000 more in the fund than we have now to get that one done. But what's scary to me is this is just the first one.
Yep,
Right.
yep.
You know,
Which is why I came up with that seemingly crazy number,
yeah,
is that we're not looking at this one bridge. We're looking
no,
at
right.
I think it's gonna come to priorities, right? Like you guys have acknowledged, I go to a lot of meetings and there's a lot of things out there that are, plus we know about and I know I'm getting off task, but just all the other things that were brought to the table for us last year that we added, that we know are gonna add to the budget.
Sure.
So
Sure.
so it's like Eric said, it's gonna be a year by year basis, maybe. the
Eric, you
bridge
just
culvert-
remind me, just so I make sure I understand. I remember having a meeting last year where we talked about how we had two culvert projects, two really things we really needed to do. And you were like, oh man, the costs are really going up and we need to focus on one of them. This is the one, right? And then we have the other still coming.
Yeah, so we're actually, so
Sorry,
to
Joel.
summarize, we have 3 culverts right now that are failed. That the engineer has rated essentially in the failed state. The good news is generally these things fail slowly. And they don't necessarily fail catastrophically, though you can see some evidence if you look at if you read the paper, you can see plenty of examples in Eastern Connecticut of catastrophic culvert failures, which lead to emergency repairs. Scotland just dropped $300,000 on 2 emergency bridges because they lost 2 culverts and had to get roads open. And then paid the wrong vendor, but that's a different problem. So yeah, we're gonna need to fund them. The problem is that it's so expensive that it's only worth it if you can get, you got to rely on state money to pay for part of the project. So you got to go after the state local bridge funding. And this time around, about 1/3 of the applications were accepted. We put in 1 application and we got it. So we were pretty lucky.
And that's a 50-50 grant.
That's a 50-50 grant. Yeah. Yeah.
And the federal stuff, that's usually 80-20, right?
The federal stuff is usually 80-20. We were able to do some kind of gymnastics and cover the last 20% for both of our big bridge replacements. So both Bunker Hill and Long Hill are fully funded. Those are basically both 4 million, low $4 million projects each. But those will require no taxpayer money in the end. We do have to pay the contractors and then get reimbursed by the state and federal government. So at some point before next fall, we're going to have to talk as a board about setting up a swing account with whoever we're using as a bank. Because there are going to be, we have about $500,000 in our fund to pay for those expenses and then get reimbursed. But there's a couple big items, like when the precast sections that get delivered, where we could have a 1-month outlay of, 800,000 or so. So we're going to need some swing for that.
But it's
We'll
temporary.
talk about that, but that's a different discussion.
Right.
So
Okay,
Eric,
understood. Sorry, I got you off topic there. I apologize.
Yeah, so keeping to that, because I know Mark doesn't have a whole lot of time either, so I just want,
Yeah, I
so
gotta go soon. Yep.
the decision we were making was if we approved, right, you going to the Board of Selectmen with this thing for the engineer? Sorry if I'm taking over, Mark, but that's just my question for him.
No, yep,
taking
I think
over.
that's basically it. Does
Yeah.
anybody have any concerns or? No, we don't necessarily need to vote at this point. You're gonna
Okay.
bring it back to us, right? Is that the case, Eric? Or do you want us to go ahead and motion? to
No, if you
approve?
guys would make a motion, that'd be great.
Okay,
That way I don't have to come back to the board.
Yeah.
okay, all right.
All right, so I'll move that we approve Eric to go to the Board of Selectmen with this, as stated, that we agree to a variance here, given the circumstances that we're okay with this quote, as much as it sucks. That it's the least worst situation. We'll put that right in the motion, by the way, as much as this sucks, we'll just put that right there. Sorry. But yeah, that's my motion, that we approve what Eric's requesting and he goes to Board of Selectmen with that. And if they agree, then we've already kind of pre-approved it.
Anybody want a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Bill, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Brian, did you vote?
Yeah, I said aye.
Okay,
Thanks.
didn't see it, didn't come across. Just want to make sure we got it for the record. Any
Thank you.
opposed? All right, any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, and I think what I'm going to do is I will hand that over to Joanne. Then if you would, Joanne, just continue. So this will take us to new business item 5E, which is the request for HVAC for the fire department and town hall. Okay,
Okay, we're ready
I'll
to
step
roll.
out. Thank you, everybody. This will still leave
Thanks,
you
Mark.
with a quorum, so you should be good. All right, take
Thank
care,
you,
guys.
Mark.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Mark.
Have a good one.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, I think that, I know I heard about this the other night at the Board of Selectmen meeting, but I think Eric is probably going to let us know about some things coming up or some changes. And I guess the only question I have, Eric, for you is, were these, I guess you'll go into it, but I don't know if these were previously approved jobs that are already budgeted for, or you're looking to add to what was budgeted for and do additional work with,
Okay.
if
Okay,
you
so.
don't mind leading the discussion on this. I mean, I listened and.
No,
yeah.
absolutely not. So we've gone through the normal CIP approval process and gone out to RFP for separately for HVAC improvements of the fire department because their PTAC units were failing and their central AC was failing. As well as improvements to the town hall, because we've had a whole series of problems with the town hall HVAC systems. So we went through the process. We went to RFP. We selected the Board of Selectmen selected a panel to review. We brought in the contractor we thought was best in our best interest for same contractor for both projects. We requested a whole series of changes to the design for both aesthetics and to get higher performance equipment. And we also requested a change from his original design because we wanted the state trooper's office to have its own separate dedicated unit because that room has the server in it. It's also often in cooling mode when everything else in the town hall is in heating mode. So you can't have one ductless split serving two heads if one is heating and one is cooling. So it did increase the costs of both of them to get exactly what we wanted, but the costs are still reasonable. So the Board of Selectmen, took the recommendation of the committee and approved both of those projects. So that's all fully compliant with our purchasing policy. There aren't any issues with that whatsoever. I don't think you as a board actually even need to agree to that, but I wouldn't mind you being on the record agreeing to hiring Corbett to do both of those projects. They're complicated in that we're using Corbett to do the HVAC. We're using Lenco to do the electrical. One, he gave us a better quote for the costs related to the HVAC install than Corbett's in-house electrician. And Corbett said right up front that if you want to use your own electrician, that's great, happy to work with them. So we're electing to do that. We also subbed out separately the installation of the gas lines in the building in the town hall, because that's actually really complicated. Just because it's an old building, it's got a lot of junk in it. And we have to also update the electrical at the same time. So that part's relatively simple. That was under the threshold at which we needed RFP or anything like that. I did not go to RFP on it, but I did solicit 3 quotes for the propane tank installation Those are all around 15,000 for the tank installation. Some of their numbers include also running the gas lines, some don't, so they're not quite apples to apples or apples to oranges comparisons. But all of the bidders were, very similar. So, and we have the money for the tank installation. We've also quoted out a couple different ways, the trenching and putting the line sets in the ground to get it from the tank pad to the buildings it needs to go to. We looked at 3 options. In the end, what we're going to do is Public Works is going to install the pads themselves. They're going to do the excavation and build the surface. And we're going to use the concrete contractor that we've used before, this guy, Butch Eldridge, who's in the past proven to be the lowest cost vendor for that. And again, we've looked at a bunch of different combinations of contractors to do it, but that seems to be the cheapest because they're, while we'll have Public Works labor involved, we're basically just paying for materials. So that will be fairly expensive to put all that piping in because we are looking at thousands of feet of piping because we're running a lot of different conduits and it's fairly complex. We are
Just to
running.
stop, can I just interrupt one? And I have all the backup here. I printed it because I need to be visual that way. So you're going over these things with us because obviously the cost. So
Sure.
I'm trying to reach, obviously this isn't my area of expertise, although I work with buildings and grounds and things like that. So I appreciate input or questions later when you're done from everyone else. These projects, like you said, are we because I feel like it came up the other night that obviously these are more expensive than you planned on, or am I wrong with that? Or some of these are already budgeted for, we're not worried about that,
So we're going to, most of the money for these projects will come from our state LoCIP account. So we have this money is money that's budgeted either, we said last year we were going to use LoCIP funds to fund most of this work.
okay,
And that plan still holds.
okay, thank you. I
but-
see that too over on the side. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, but it's still money that's under your control.
Mhm.
Of the things we weren't accounting for, I honestly didn't realize how much conduit we needed and what the costs of that are.
Mhm.
Part of what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to only dig once. And while we have the ground open for the community center, I want to put everything in the ground now.
Okay.
So I don't have to
that's-
finish the community center and immediately dig it back up
that's-
and
thank
put the
you.
next thing in. So.
You're trying to be proactive to get this work done at the best time because of all the construction and building that's going on. Plus
It makes
upgrading the
no
town hall.
sense to
like,
dig it all back up again. That's
Seriously, why would you do it twice? Yeah.
Right,
Right.
and in the big, one of the big chunks of this is all the conduit for future electrical work is going in. And that is really based on the fact that we've known for a long time, we need to replace the generator at Public Works. Because it's not big enough to run, or not Public Works, at the fire station. Because that generator currently covers the fire station in a portion of the town hall. Does not run the elevators, does not run the community room. It only runs some emergency circuits on the town hall. Like for instance, this room has no lights when we're on backup generator. My computer works for about the first 24 hours till our server goes down because our server is not on emergency power.
Mhm.
So we have some issues with that.
Mhm.
The problem we ran into is a chicken and egg thing. I originally wanted to do the electrical upgrades first and then worry about the HVAC. The problem is we can't do the electrical work because our utility room is not code compliant. And it can't be made code compliant until I do the HVAC, because they put the piping to the oil tank directly over the electrical panel, which is a code violation.
I remember this.
So I'm faced with the fact that I have to pull permits and I have to do both projects at the same time, or I can't do either project. So where I need the approval of the Board of Finance, and I'll be very upfront with you on this. So we meet the purchasing policy for the tank stuff, for the conduit stuff, because that is just a straight materials cost. You know, we're doing the labor
Labor,
in-house
yeah.
with our own crew.
Mhm.
And the HVAC projects, because those have gone through the normal RFP process.
Right.
What has not is the electrical work.
Mhm.
And the reason it hasn't is the electrical work in the fire department's very simple. It's a newer building built in the 90s, wired well, and it's easy to run the work to meet the new HVAC work. So no issues there. The town hall is not simple because we're essentially changing 4 or 5 things at once. We have to change the main meter socket on the building because they now require meter disconnects, and we have to change the wiring to the meter because the wiring's so corroded that the electrician's like, I'm not wiring to this, you got to change that. As soon as we change that, we got to change the meter.
Mhm.
We have to change the old main service panel in the building because it's an FPE stab lock panel.
Don't
Those
make them
haven't,
anymore.
those haven't been legal since the 80s
No,
because they're a fire hazard. Right?
they're fire hazard. They burned houses down, yeah.
Yeah, so we know we've known for a while, we have to get rid of that. So
Right.
basically, it's gonna be a fairly complete changeover of the electrical system of the building. You know, and it's complex because we're also putting in a 400 amp transfer switch so that we can run the new generator when we get it, because it's gonna add $10,000 or $15,000 to the cost if we try to do just the intermediate step and then have to go back and put in a big automatic transfer switch. So the goal is to do everything at once because that's the most cost-effective way to do it. But I really don't want to go to RFP for that. And the reason is simple, and that's Rick's been dealing with our electrical stuff on this building for a lot of years, and he understands it. You know, and there's probably been 8 or 10 days of planning to get to this point. I mean, I've sat down and met with him at least 10 times and gone over various options about how to even do this.
Are we convinced? Because I did hear it the other night as well, so I appreciate you going, so that all the board members can hear. Are you, and you were speaking to this, that this particular company is very familiar with the town hall, doesn't have you, and it would involve a lot of your time too, to write up the RFP, to ask for everything that you would need, right? With this, to solicit other bids from companies. I'm not pretending to understand it, but I understand at a surface level,
Sure.
all the work and the time commitment of you yourself and everybody else that's involved in it. The only thing, I have 2 questions. When this electrical work is being done, does the town hall get shut down for a while? I don't know how, you said it's rewiring. Will that involve? No.
They're gonna put it
Okay,
side
thank
by
you.
side and switch over.
Good. I mean, I
Yes.
know Mike would know that, or different, yeah. Okay, and then
Right.
number 2 is, are we confident, Eric, that because it will be a big expense in redoing it, that, or anybody that can answer this, that it will be done the right way? I mean, obviously, I don't know exactly what I'm saying. You're saying it's extensive, it's rewiring the whole building. We're confident that this will be the end, right? You're gonna change the panel, do all the things you have to do, rewire, get rid of the corroded. So this is the end all fix for all of the problems to finally get it where you want it to be. Because
Yeah.
the other night they had a couple temporary things they were talking about. And
Well,
then it
and-
finally
and-
came to this.
Right, and I said right
I
up front.
listen, I might
that
not
if-
know it all, but yeah,
If they were unwilling to, if they wanted to go to RFP in the interest of time, we would do it.
piecemeal, I think, right?
We
You
would do
could-
it piecemeal and we would do the minimum we needed to do to start the HVAC work. And put in a sub panel, but it would require a lot of rework later. And I already talked about it with Rick, although he doesn't like that solution, he was willing to do that.
Mhm.
But it would be more expensive to do it partially now. Because anytime you got to do something and then tear out what you just did
Right.
and do it, we would be able to
More
reuse a
work,
lot.
more money, more, yeah.
But
So I
but,
want to
yeah.
defer, thank you for, I want to open it up to the board and people that understand this kind of work more, like Bill and Rob and Brian, if he does, and whoever would like to ask questions about that. I mean, I did hear the whole thing, yeah. Or.
I'll defer to Bill because he
opinion.
seems like he knows what he's talking
I
about.
know.
I'm a claims handler. I don't know anything. Come
Well, I'm
on,
in the
guys.
electrical industry and everything he just said makes perfect sense.
Okay,
The one thing, Joanne, I would never say is they're not rewiring the building. They're putting in a new panel, they're putting in a new meter socket, they're putting in a new transfer switch. All the wiring through the building is not
okay. See,
updated. You can never
Thank you.
say this is the end all be all, so I wouldn't want to trap
oh,
anybody into thinking that, but it does make the most sense whenever you bring a contractor in to do everything once, not to have them leave and come back again. It's like,
Right.
if I have a tree cut down in my front yard, it costs $3,000 just to get the guy here. And then I say, oh, add that tree, it's $300. Add that tree, another $300. You don't want to have contractors going back and forth.
Right.
So I agree 100%. We should just do it while the guy's there and get it done.
okay,
Yeah,
Yeah,
And-
I have no expertise to add here, but it all makes sense to me.
yeah,
It just in the interest of always when you can package things together like that and get it all done, it's almost always going to be more efficient, more cost effective.
Mhm.
And it's funny you mentioned the tree work. I literally did a deal with my neighbors 10 years ago, 15 years ago now, where we had them come out and do trees for both of us at the same time. We
Mhm.
saved a bunch of money
Shitload of money.
because
Right, makes
you're
sense. 'cause the
mobilizing
equipment's
once,
there.
not
Yeah.
twice.
Yep.
So
And
yes.
Eric, what is the time frame if you get the okay from all the boards that you have to? What are you looking at as a time frame?
well, you're actually the last board I need permission for, because the Board of Selectmen's already said yes.
Yeah.
I would notify both of the major contractors tomorrow that we're going to go ahead with it. I know it's a 4 to 5 week delay in ordering the HVAC parts.
Mhm.
And I know some of the electrical stuff, like the 400 amp transfer switch we can get. It's a question about whether we can get a new meter main right now. That may be a while. So there's still, but we can do almost all of the project, certainly within the next 4 months. That's really
Okay.
the goal, to
This
get the major
fiscal year,
portion done
yeah.
in 4 months.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I have a question then,
Yeah.
to bring this to a close then, as I think we are reaching a consensus here. The motion you specifically need from us would be to approve what specifically, the
Mhm.
electrical work again? Just walk me through it, sorry.
Additional electrical work without RFP. Right.
So, yeah, so
That's
what the
in-
Board of Selectmen said at their meeting, and actually Jeff Murray was the one who brought it up, was that, as far as he's concerned, having a stab block panel in municipal building, in his mind constitutes an emergency. Because they are a fire hazard.
I did
And
listen to this whole thing.
I
and
do
then-
somewhat
yeah.
get that. And, you know, the reality is we are sitting in a town hall, a public building that has a bunch of code violations in it that really need to get correct. So the Board of Selectmen bought off it on the basis that it really kind of is an emergency. And, you know, on that basis, they're comfortable with not going to RFP. And if you look in the purchasing policy under 3.2, that is one of the exceptions to going to RFP and not publicly bidding something is if you agree that it is a public emergency. So essentially what I would say is that I would ask the Board of Finance to agree to waive the provision for an RFP for the electrical work outlined in the packet. That's what
Okay.
I would.
That's what I was looking for, because you
There you
sold me
go.
on the rest of it.
Yeah,
So I will in fact make that motion. I will move that the Board of Finance approve Eric to proceed with the electrical work provided in the packet and waive the purchasing policy provisions that would require an RFP for that work.
I'll second that.
okay, so Rob has made the motion, Bill has seconded it. And is there any further discussion on this situation? All right, seeing no further discussion, or go ahead, Brian, did you? I thought I heard. Okay, okay, I'd like to go ahead and call this one to vote then. All in favor of this motion, say aye.
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 Brian's an aye. I
Sorry,
could
Brian,
hear
you're kind of breaking up. Was that an aye?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, that's an aye.
Thank you. There you are, loud
hear
and
me?
Thank
clear.
you.
So this motion passes,
Thank
1, 2, 3, 4.
4-0.
Oh, is there anyone opposed? I don't think there's anyone left. I see Linda over there. Yeah, so the motion passes. We're all set with that, Eric.
Linda's happily retired, I believe.
I know. I was wondering if she was gonna come back, if she was gonna, throw her. Linda, I don't know. I might be calling you.
Oh, you're still muted, but yeah, I see. Yeah.
We miss you. Eric, so we're all set with that, right? You have everything you need on that?
Yes, I don't think you technically need to approve either the propane install or the HVAC, because those already went to RFP and those conform to policy. If
Yeah,
you would
that
like
should be
to
fine.
vote for them, that's great, and I'd be happy to. If you don't, that's
I think
probably
we're
okay.
fine. Listen, I'm,
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
getting,
let's keep moving.
yeah, we're
Yep.
doing good. So I guess we are now at the point of number 6, item agenda 6, approval of the meeting minute. I don't think they were included in the packet.
I didn't see.
I don't
I
have.
scrolled through so much stuff and then my eyes glazed over, so I
The
may
end
have
was
missed it.
I
didn't
think
see
it
'em.
was, it was a mistake, I think, Eric. I think it was an old agenda was attached at the end. So I'm
Yeah,
gonna
you know
have,
what? She screwed up and put the agenda in instead of minutes.
and no
Bad
worries,
admin assistant, bad.
So
I think we're
let's
just
push
gonna
that.
push it to the
Yeah.
next meeting. We'll
Yep.
wait that. And then we'll move on down to item 7, the administrator's report, if Eric has anything to fill us in on.
I don't have anything really big. The budget's coming together pretty well. I've gotten all the budgets back from the departments. I've sent the original budget to the Board of Selectmen. We had a long meeting on Monday, kind of talking about priorities and things they wanted to fund, things they didn't want to fund. And then Tuesday, I gave them the full-blown copy of the budget. And kind of the reason why we've done this in years past, because it's not. I mean, ultimately, the budget is your responsibility for the Board of Finance. But the Board of Selectmen's role has kind of 2 roles. By charter, they determine the salary and benefits for employees other than elected officials. Elected officials is your responsibility. And then they get a say in what are the kind of the the overview of the budget, like what are the priorities? What are the projects we want to accomplish? And how do we want to fund them? So that's really the next 5 or 6 weeks is going through that
Right.
with the Board of Selectmen. And then it comes to you and you guys do the nuts and bolts of the budget and, you know, offer a gut check on what could actually get through a public meeting and what you're willing to fund and what you aren't.
Yep.
So,
Like we
Yep.
said earlier, I mean, we had so many things come up to us during the year, so it's gonna be interesting to see how it all falls together, you know, with the
Right.
purchase of the trucks or whatever's gonna be funded, I mean, and we'll take that as it comes. We'll have plenty of time to go back and forth on that.
Yep.
No, I appreciate it. I do want to make a comment to you that it was such a nice, I was able to attend the veterans ceremony, you know, that's really important, near and dear to me. Both my parents served in, you know, the Army at different times. So yeah, it was a great job, good turnout, nice. I mean, I had to leave towards the end, but I stayed for the photos and everything. So good job. You know, that was a nice thing that the town did.
yeah, I take no credit for that personally. That was largely Susan Camerota,
Mhm.
our Veterans Affairs, or one of our 2 Veterans Affairs coordinators.
Mhm.
She and John Body worked on that kind of tirelessly, so they did a
That was a
fabulous job.
great, it was really nice. So-
It was really nice to see the community supported it. I mean,
Yes,
we had 160 seats set up in the auditorium
right,
and we had people standing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
that's as
Very
good as it
nice.
gets.
well, good turnout. So are we all set to move on to our liaison reports at this point?
Yep, unless you have specific questions for me as the administrator.
Sorry, I
I'm
should have
happy to
asked
answer
that.
what
Yeah,
you
does
got.
anyone have any questions that they want to pose to Eric at this point?
I'm
All
good.
right, we're gonna move on to the liaison reports. I know that, I don't know if, Rob, I know you're one of the liaisons. Do you
Right,
have?
CIP was canceled this month. We didn't have anything.
Okay.
So I don't have anything to report there.
And I think that's all we have, right? Brian, are you a liaison for the recreation committee, or is that not?
I can be, but yeah, there's nothing to report.
Okay,
Really. Yeah,
thank you.
no problem.
All right, moving on to number 9, board open discussion. I want to throw it out there if anyone has anything that they want to bring up. The one thing I will bring up is, I know that we talked about, and we'll get into this when we start the, you know, now that we're back together and we get going, but hopefully we'll have, when we get to the budget season, if there's, you know, we'll wait and see. The only thing I want to put out there, because I know Eric likes feedback and stuff, we'll get a little more organized with if there are going to be some asks or whatever, that I know they go to the Board of Selectmen first and it's a long way. We have a whole nother month to go. But if there are specific things, like last year we had certain raises to consider or different things, to be a little more, you know, organized with that this season so that it'll flow better and not be getting things like at the last minute or whatever. And we get that that has to happen, but I think I'm more towards, just having people appear to us and kind of concentrating on that and then moving on. That's my one
Just
thing.
warning
in
us, basically. There are things like we just heard tonight about our bridge projects. You know, we know that that's a thing, and that we're now aware of that. You kind of mull that, right?
Yeah.
You can kind of let that sit and think about it, right? Is that kind of what you're saying, Joanne? Like
Absolutely.
to
Well,
bring
you
it
know,
up,
I think
talk
we had
about
the
it.
fire truck thing that came at the end, but I think even Linda was nice enough to remind us all that in the past, when there was something that maybe was a big ask, you know, rather than just the percent. I'm just throwing it out there. I'll formulate it better, but Mark had even said, we'll have people appear to us to just present
Yeah.
what it is, you know, something like that. Hey, maybe we won't even have any, and you know, we got all the surprises last year, but
Ha!
somehow I
You
doubt it.
wish.
I know, there you go. I'm thinking it into existence. All right, moving on to I'm kind of going fast, I know, but correspondence, we don't have any that I'm aware of. You know, we looked through the packet. Public,
I
oh, sorry.
do have one thing I want to go over briefly. You may
Can
or
I
may
just
not
inter-
hear about, oh, sorry.
No,
Yep.
we'll be fine with that, Eric. I just want to warn you guys that I might have to move locations again. I'm hoping to get through if I, but so if you suddenly see me go blank, it's only to move my computer to another spot and I'll be fine. So go ahead.
Okay, so we had a little snafu. So as I probably said to you before, we're struggling with M&T Bank, who's our municipal bank. We're not alone. All the towns are, really frustrated with M&T. So we are actively looking for a new bank to switch to. I mean, what I've heard through the grapevine, and I don't know whether this is true, that they're kind of trying to get rid of most of their municipal clients. And, whether they're really as incompetent as they appear to be, or whether they are deliberately trying to shuffle us along by just providing us bad service. It's been horrendous. And they called the treasurer the other day and told them that our fund was overexpended and that there was $170,000 payment due, which set off a little internal panic with us because, ultimately I'm the only person that can approve $170,000 payment, and I did not. So, our first thought was, we have some sort of fraud issue we have to deal with. It was nothing like that. It was actually, we have what's called a sweep account that always maintains $600,000 in it. So stuff from the tax collector's office, all the state revenues come into the sweep account and then automatically get swept out into the main account. And then we also pay bills out of that account. It's like a working account, like if you had a checking and a savings with the two linked. Well, their little link between our sweep and our regular account broke, basically. So it was an internal banking control issue, but it's one of those things where they really kind of panicked us a little bit, because it was $170,000, payment that none of us knew anything about. So, and then they just kind of sloughed it off and never even really gave us a full explanation. Oh, don't worry about it. Just an internal, routing thing.
And
It's
an
like,
apology would have
really?
been nice.
You're calling us and telling us, we've overdrawn our bank account and, and we've got $170,000 payment to something and you're going to just slough it off. So both the treasurer and I are quite pissed about that. And they've still refused. We always had Brinks pickup because there are times of the year when we get a fair bit of cash into the tax collector's office, and we always had Brinks pick up the money. And they just basically stopped paying the Brinks bill. And about 4 months after that, Brinks cut us off. And we didn't know because the bills never came to us. And then Brinks billed us directly, and we're like, we don't have an account with you. The bank has an account with you. And they've just never bothered to pay the Brinks account. And it's just, there's a ton of little things like that that are just, really crazy. And I think they're probably unhappy with us now because instead of sitting, $3 million, which they're paying us no interest on, we put our money in the stiff account. So the bottom line is, I suspect in the next 6 months, we're going to change banks and go for a bank with a little better service than them. We had a sit-down meeting with JCSB, which is Jewett City Savings Bank, because they're actively recruiting municipal accounts. The problem with that is they're not exactly in our area, and we're still trying to work out a Brinks pickup equivalent because we're not driving to Jewett City Savings Bank to drop stuff. Now, checks are easy to deal with because we can just, they will give us an actual check processing machine. We just run it through the machine and it goes to them electronically.
Well, that
So
sounds
anyway,
good, Eric. I don't mean to cut you. I mean, so bottom line is maybe you're looking into that. You and Cheryl will report to us, as it's going on. I don't,
Yep.
I don't have any further questions at this time, but I appreciate you letting us know and keeping us in the loop, and it makes sense. I mean, not getting an apology when you do, you're right, when you're at work, and that's a huge stress, and worry and maybe causing extra work for everyone. So no, thank you for keeping us in the loop with that. Was there anything else, or are we good?
No, I'm good.
Thank you for that, Eric. And then, so I'm gonna skip 10, we're all set there. Number 11 would be public speak. Linda, I don't know if you would like to say anything to the board.
Yeah, just a couple of little things. Eric said it earlier that I still think of me as we, but the Board of Finance is responsible for the budgets, the salaries of elected people. So I think it's important to have Carol Lee come and present a budget every year, just out of respect and to know what she's doing. And also, I was cleaning off my desk and I do have a copy of the ballot, so I know who ran.
Oh, I'll
I
take
will
the
too.
names.
So if you want me to read it.
Yeah, there was 2 additional names, Linda, if you have
Yeah.
them.
There was John Truskowski.
Apparently he moved
T1
out of town.
Oh, he moved out. Well, that's a good excuse.
I already checked on this.
And Jay
of the-
Cummins,
Yeah,
Cammons,
we're working on him, but the other guy moved out of town, so.
easy come,
Yeah,
easy
I
go.
was already texting with Shannon on this because we're both on DTC and those are Democratic candidates. So my first
Great.
thought was, okay, we had candidates who didn't win. Let's go back to them. And
Yeah.
I can tell you one of the 2 is a no-go because they just moved to East Hampton.
There you go.
And the other 2 TBD. We're working on it.
Linda, I know you have more points, so I
No,
just
that's
want to.
it.
No, well, I appreciate, that's kind of, I know that we went through a lot with Carol last year, so not a lot, but we had, a back and forth. We did a lot of research. It was a big, thing. I know we got resolution with her, but that's exactly what I was talking about. If we had some kind of point of contention or even point of not contention, but just point of interest where we need the information, we want to hear from the person to lead, to make their case to us. So that kind of thing, Rob, when you were asking me.
Yeah, but if if you're responsible for her salary, then I think it's important that at least she come to the Board of Finance.
Right.
Whether you have a question about it or anything, I just think it's an important courtesy to her.
Oh, of course,
Yeah.
and we learned from that last year, and then they made a nice, the way they staggered the salary, it was great, the years of experience are important. I think it goes to the Board of Selectmen first to establish things, and then we'll get that spreadsheet, and if we have any questions, or if it's, but you're right, we'll take that into consideration, because you were saying that you used to hear from the people that were elected maybe, or whatever.
Well, we used to hear from everybody.
From
and it was
everyone.
fun. We had the beautification committee, the rec department, everybody, the little people, the big people, the fire chief.
Yeah.
And I really felt like I knew what was going on in town.
Well, I know, and I don't expect everybody, and I know everybody can't do this. They're at different stages of life than I am. I couldn't have when I was raising my family and going to basketball games and whatever. But that's why I kind of go to those meetings too, to hear what's going on. So I start the process. But thank you, Linda. No, good points.
Yeah.
And give it some thought, Linda. There's an open seat here, but let us know. So anyways, thank you again.
Just when she thought she was out.
I know, she's just conveniently
Well, but
here. I
I'm
can't
still-
help but,
I'm still gonna haunt you, even if I am out.
That's good. Well, we miss you, of course.
Emeritus.
you
It's an
tonight.
emeritus position. You really have to think of it that way.
There you go, right? She can be. But anyways, I don't know about everybody else, but I think it's been a full meeting. It's good to get back to it. I don't know if I'm ready to adjourn. I don't know if someone wants to make the motion to
I'll make
adjourn.
the motion.
I will
Okay,
second that motion.
there you go. Bill made the motion, Rob seconded, vote. Are we
Aye.
ready for? let's-
Aye.
Good
Aye.
night.
Good. Well, good night, everybody. Good to see you. And Best of
Thanks for
luck.
taking over, Joanne. Good job,
Great.
and we'll see you next
Everybody.
time.
my first time there, but